Today, we're going to talk about rowing the Concept 2 at a level 1 fan setting. In one of my recent videos, we discussed rowing the Concept 2 at a level 10. We discussed the do's and don'ts of rowing level 10 and when and why you might want to incorporate level 10 rowing into your training. And today we're going to do the same thing with a level 1. And as a quick recap, when we bring the fan down from 10 to 1, we are effectively closing this fan off and restricting the amount of airflow in and out of the machine. Conversely, when we're at a level 10, we have opened the fan up and we are encouraging more air to flow in and out. At a level 10, this is producing greater resistance and also resistance against the fan during the recovery of the stroke, so the fan dies down faster in between each stroke. On the other hand, at a level 1, we're restricting that airflow, and so the fan is going to spin much more freely, but the resistance is also going to be lower. So why is it that we would ever want to restrict the airflow down to a level 1, making the resistance as low as possible? And the answer is that we can use level 1 rowing in a way that promotes feel around the front end of the rowing stroke and also acceleration across the drive. To be sure, rowing is a sport of power, but it's also a sport of acceleration. This rowing machine responds best to an acceleration of the handle from the front end of the stroke to the back end of the stroke. So when we match our power with great acceleration across the entirety of the drive of the stroke, that is gold standard in rowing. So let's first talk about level 1 as it promotes feel for the rowing machine. And set at level 1, the resistance is lighter, so we as athletes have to feel the front end a little bit more. In the previous video in which we were rowing level 10 with the fan all the way open, when we press out of the front end, the resistance of that fan is readily available. And so we're really able to feel that resistance because it presents. So it's really just given to us, and in a certain sense, we don't have to be that aware of that resistance because it just presents at level 10. Conversely, when we take that level 10 and we've now moved it down to a level 1, it's not going to be as high a level of resistance. And so when we come into and out of the front end, this initial movement and motion here, there is less of a presentation of resistance. And so we're required to really feel for that connection and take it with us across the drive phase of the stroke. And so at level 1, if we can come into the front end of the stroke and feel instantaneous connection around the front end, feel that we are connected at the front end before we start moving across the drive. That is what we're looking to achieve. That is a high level of feel around the front end of the rowing stroke. So at level 1, much harder to connect to the machine at the front end because there is less resistance. So instead of being presented with resistance around the front end like we are at level 10, at level 1, we have to feel it right here. And as the fan picks up speed, it becomes more and more difficult to feel instantaneous connection. But that's what we want. Every stroke feeling locked on and then accelerated across the drive. And so we can use level 1 rowing to promote feel around the front end of the rowing stroke, the feel of the connection to the resistance around the front end of the rowing stroke. And we can do that in the way that I was just doing it, taking nice steady strokes. And we can also do that in a way where we're building off the line until we just can't keep up with the connection anymore. And so that looks a little bit more like this, where we're starting to press a little faster, and just keep going up until it feels too faint around the front end. And so it gets lighter and lighter and lighter, and we're increasing our feel more and more and more, stroke after stroke after stroke. So the first thing we promote rowing level 1 is feel at the front end of the rowing stroke. The second thing that we can promote is fast acceleration across the drive. Because in the same way that because the load is lighter, it's harder to feel the front end, it's also a lighter load, so it's easier to get across the drive. So we can actually get behind the fan in a certain sense if we're not aggressively accelerating across the drive. And that's why it's important to use this drill in two parts. One, to promote the feel. And once you have that feel, that instantaneous connection, you want to accelerate off of that connection across the drive. What we don't want is to be connected, but then just have one speed across the drive. You can hear it doesn't do anything to the fan, and although the resistance is lighter, I'm not producing any speed, wattage, or power. So instead, we want to connect and accelerate through. Connect, accelerate. Drive across. Drive across. Less resistance, requiring more acceleration across the drive. Now, you'd never want to row an entire piece at level 1. That is a formula for hamster heart and feeling like a hamster in a wheel. You will spike your heart rate. You'll never feel that you have the right level of resistance on each stroke. You're gonna feel like you're chasing strokes in terms of trying to keep up with the fan speed, trying to keep up with that acceleration. But it's a great drill to train connection and to train leg speed. So we train that feel around the front end, so we're instantaneously connected, and we train leg speed and acceleration across the drive because there is less resistance. So after spending some time level 1 rowing steady strokes, and once you feel comfortable that you have your connection at steady strokes, do a few builders so that you are challenging your acceleration and maintenance of acceleration each stroke as you build up stroke rating and intensity. From there, what we can do is we can gradually start to introduce more resistance on the machine until we get back to wherever it is we feel most comfortable setting our fan. Now, without getting too specific into drag factor, we're going to talk in generalities about fan setting, but let's say we're at a level 1 to start and we've done the drilling as I've just done. Now we're going to take it up to a level 3. And so we have an increase in the resistance. So we're gonna feel that front end a little bit more. We're gonna have a little more resistance, which is gonna challenge our acceleration. And so we want to take that feeling that we had at level 1 of that quick connection around the front end and good acceleration around the front end and apply it to a bit more resistance as we have level 3. So even here from 1 to 3, I'm noticing more resistance, more pressure against the handle each stroke. And after I've taken some steady strokes, I can build and really try to accelerate through in the same way that I was doing at level 1. So this level 3 setting is still lighter than I use for my training and my pieces on this machine. And without getting into very specific drag factor, let's just put it up right into 5, which is right around where I usually set the resistance for this machine. So I started level 1 with very little resistance, and I used it to work on my connection and acceleration. I then challenged my connection and acceleration at level 3, and I'm now going to challenge my connection and my acceleration again at my normal resistance setting. And so same thing, taking normal strokes, take enough strokes to feel the resistance at the new setting, and then when ready, accelerate across the drive with leg speed and connection, pressing and moving through. And so for anyone who is struggling with connection around the front end, for anyone who is trying to perfect or trying to learn acceleration across the entirety of the drive, taking the resistance out of the equation forces you to feel those things, promotes that feel. You have to search for that connection at the front end at a level 1. It doesn't just present like a very heavy level 10. Instead, you have to be there feeling connection between feet and handle around the front end. You then, at a level 1, have the ability to really accelerate across the drive. There is not enough resistance to prevent you from doing so you can really accelerate. Once you start to develop that feel, once you develop that flow and that rhythm, then you can move to an intermediate resistance, and then you can move back to your traditional resistance. And by the time you get back to your normal resistance, you'll find you're doing a good job of connecting at the front end and accelerating across the entirety of the drive. And so although we don't want to row level 1 all the time, in the same way in our previous video we said we don't want to row level 10 all the time, there are situations and circumstances in which level 1 rowing can be very beneficial for the technical elements of your rowing stroke. So I really encourage you to experiment with level 1 rowing to help improve on the technical aspects of your rowing stroke, to then feed back into your rowing at the resistance level with which you feel most comfortable. If you found this video useful, please like, subscribe, share it with your friends and teammates, and know there'll be even more rowing content coming to you soon.